This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is April 28th, 2022. Jonathan Osborne here. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Luke Sylvia.
How's it going, guys?
There he is.
I'm really. You didn't ask me a question.
I
Usually
told
you're
you
like,
I wasn't
"How's
gonna
it going,
do that.
Luke?"
We discussed this before
I know,
we started
but
recording.
I just it's just a habit at this point, man.
Well,
anyway,
now we're embarrassed because we're joined by our special guest, Dan.
Yeah,
are you a savage? Savage. Dan, what's up, bro?
Just trying to live up to the family name.
I wanted to ask you about that. Is that like a line that you had in your pocket for a while, or that was just like off the dome with Gary Harris at Media Day?
Yeah, that was new content.
That's impressive.
As it came out. Yeah, because sometimes you get the Macho Man a lot. Growing up, I got a lot of the Fred and Ben Savage. Anytime I could throw a Boy Meets World reference on the show, I'm going to do it. But that came up a lot. But just the straight Savage is something with the newer, younger generation. Since Instagram picked up, my name in terms of coolness has gained traction. So that one was off the cuff.
If you guys don't understand what we're referring to, first of all, you can go back and watch all the Orlando Magic Media Day from the beginning of the season. But Gary Harris is going through his Media Day availability, and it's kind of Dan's turn to start asking Gary some questions. Says, hey, Dan Savage, OrlandoMagic.com. And Gary looks at him and goes, "Are you a savage?" And Dan goes, "Oh, well, I come from a long line of savages." And I don't know that there's a better response that you can have to that question given the circumstances. I was so proud of Dan. I was like, that is perfect. The timing, everything was great.
And all the Savage family members that I have loved the line because they felt it paid homage to them.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
Yeah. And so, I'm actually technically Dan Savage the third. So
wow.
It does hold true. Long line of Savages, long line of Dan Savage.
Yeah, that would have been. I mean, you probably don't want to get into all of that with Gary. I mean, actually, as a matter of fact, I'm the third, but that's awesome. So Dan, we planned on having you on after the Super Bowl, but you're wearing the hat. Given the circumstances, we don't want to rip open any old wounds, but just given the circumstances, we didn't feel it was the right time. But what did you think of the Bengals season? The way they performed in the Super Bowl and the future of the Bengals.
Oh, I mean, unquestioned, extremely thrilled. Going into the season, you're looking at it like, okay, Joe Burrow's coming back from an ACL injury. This is Jamar Chase's first season. They still have some work to do on the offensive line. If they could just be in the playoff hunt come December and have meaningful games in December, I considered that a success. And then you get to the point where it's like, okay, they're going to the playoffs. They're hosting a playoff game. Got to go. I'm hoping I'd be happy with one playoff win. That would be huge. And the playoff drought, because you see those graphics, nobody's been able to text message about a Bengals win in the playoffs, all that stuff. So to be there for that, with some of my good friends who I, grew up watching the Bengals with, it was the experience of a lifetime. And so for that run to continue, and then for me to go throughout and continue, the AFC Championship game in Kansas City was electric. The Super Bowl was odd. The Bengals radio play-by-play guy on his podcast, Dan Horde, was describing it like Jurassic World the original Jurassic Park when they walk out into the stadium and you're like, oh wow, dinosaurs do exist. That's what it's like being at that stadium. It's unreal. It's not like anything you've ever seen. And to see the Bengals in the Super Bowl, it was just a surreal day. And, something I'll never forget. And while the outcome, wasn't what I wanted, they were in that game. It came down to the final seconds. And to have that kind of a season unexpectedly, it was just something else. And so shout out to the Bengals, Joe Burrow, for making that a special season.
Hooday.
Hooday.
And Dan, so I know this was the case for me kind of in when the Magic not most recently, but the first part of that 2-part playoff appearance, when the Magic made the playoffs, leading up to that point, I had decided probably a few weeks out, right, when it looked pretty, very promising, the Magic were going to be in the playoffs. I decided at that point I need to be in the building for the playoffs, no matter what. I don't care who we're playing. I don't care what I feel like our chances are. What was that kind of like when with Cincinnati? I mean, how far in advance did you know? Okay, I need to start looking at tickets for the postseason. I need to be there.
Well, I got lucky, in a lot of ways with this. I have a friend that has season tickets to the Bengals games. He doesn't actually live in Cincinnati. He doesn't go all that frequently, but he's got 4 tickets. And so when they clinched, and it was determined they were going to have a home playoff game, he called me up. He said, "Hey, you come out here. One of these is yours." So so that was a great phone call to get, and stumbled into a similar situation with the same guy for the Super Bowl. It wasn't something I was actually getting ready to plan for a Super Bowl party, how big I wanted it to be. That's like the tough thing, because it's like when it's your team, a Super Bowl party is different. I was having to tell a lot of people that were calling me up like, I don't know if I want to do anything, because I didn't want people who weren't into the game watching the game with me. It was like I wanted a very select few people who would be hanging on every play, versus let's watch the halftime show crowd, or talk about what celebrities are at the game. I wanted it very, very serious and focused. So that guest list, getting invited to the Super Bowl, saved me from having a lot of tough conversations, to be quite honest, because I was starting to have some of those.
That's awesome. Well, how do you feel like the Bengals' chances moving forward? I know they've made some moves in free agency, bolstering up the offensive line. I think anytime you've got Burrow and Jamar Chase, the offense is going to be electric. How do you feel about the future of the Bengals?
Well, I think the stigma with the Bengals has always been, do they spend money? Are they, cheap organization? And, over the last couple of years, they've erased that doubt. Over the 2 seasons prior, they were some of the biggest spenders in free agency. And then this offseason, there's one big lingering question. Are you going to protect Joe Burrow? Are you going to commit to keeping him upright, and to go out right on the, it was like 12:01 hit and free agency. And I'm like, just getting ready to get Twitter ready. And it's like already the Bengals have signed 2 offensive linemen. It was like, whoa. And then, they went out and when the Cowboys cut La'el Collins, who's, a Pro Bowl level right tackle when healthy, and they added him, it's like, okay, they completely redid from center to right tackle their offensive line. So, to erase a lot of those questions and then enter the draft with the ability to, take best player available. In the NFL, that's a real luxury. So I like the way they've set themselves up heading into draft night.
All right, well, let's switch gears. We talked about your Bengals. The reason that the folks want to hear you, we want to talk about the Magic. So not the season that maybe we had hoped for, but probably the season that we expected. First of all, what is it like, kind of working with the team, being around the team every day in a season like that? And then just kind of what were your thoughts, kind of big picture of the team this season?
Jeff Weltman spoke recently. I forget whether it was on Mike Bianchi's show or something. He said, all losing seasons aren't created equally. And I thought that was a great line that really summed it up. And huge testament goes that with Jamal Mosley. There are different coaches that you need at different times, different stages of franchise development. And I just feel like he is a great coach to help guide this franchise into the future, going through a rebuild, because you guys watch every night. There were very few nights where you could look at this Magic team and say they weren't trying, they weren't playing hard, they didn't play to the final whistle. And I just think that's creating such a winning culture, because when, I set up 3 TVs out in the room I'm in right now. I watch League Pass every night as I'm doing my work, coming home and doing that. And there's a lot of teams in the NBA that, when they hit this stretch of the season and they're in losing aspects of the season where it's clear they're not going to make the playoffs, and you could just see players give up, or it hits the 4th quarter and they're like, all right, this one's in the bag. And with the Magic, you never saw that. And so I just think he's really gets how to connect with players, how to motivate people. You could feel that not only with the players, with the other coaches, with people on the staff, with the media. He's really got an ability to connect, and that was one of the hiring points about him, and it is as advertised. So I really like that element of it. And then the other part is you look at a number of the young guys on this roster, and we all saw throughout the stages, guys get better, guys improve, guys show signs for the future, whether it was in flashes or whether it was extended stretches. So that really has you feeling optimistic heading into the future. And then on top of that, you consider that the Magic have another draft pick this year of their own that'll be quite valuable. We'll see where it falls in the coming weeks. And then you look forward to the season, you look at that Chicago Bulls trade and say, okay, not only do the Magic have their pick the following season, but they'll potentially have the Bulls pick as well. So they're loaded with cap space, assets, and draft picks for the years to come that have you excited about the future.
And I want to talk about that, Dan, here, and this is kind of a not really a side question, but you talk about. I mean, we recently Duncan Robinson with his Long Shot Pod had released an episode with Moritz Wagner, and in that episode he had talked with him and said, like, talking to his co-host. I don't know the guy's name, but he was talking with his co-host, and he said there was something different about that Magic team going into the last game of the year. Like, that wasn't a normal for teams that are losing to really show that much toughness to want to win. I want to kind of ask you to maybe, I know you just talked about that here, but as far as guys like Moritz Wagner, how important do you think those low level guys who seemingly brought a lot to the team this year, can you kind of just talk about his impact on the roster and anybody else that might be flying under the radar that really helped in that way too?
No question. I mean, he is the prototypical play hard every night kind of guy, both he and his brother. Unquestionably, bring that level of fight, competitiveness, winning characteristics. And when you really look at the guys that the Magic have added to this locker room, it's guys who want to be united, who want to be part of something special, and want to play to win. And I mean, it's just from that first, win of the season where they're celebrating for their head coach, that first win of the season, we get that peek into the locker room, all the way to the end, you just saw a group that's connected. It's one of those things that, like, culture is really hard to define, but when you know when you don't have it, and when you do have it. And, that's one of those things with the Magic group is you could just see, whether it's comments on social media that we all see, whether it's just the tight-knit nature of them in the locker room or, on the practice court together, or the way that they celebrate each other, whether guys are on the floor or off the floor, whether they're hurt or injured. I mean, geez, we see Jalen Suggs doing the gritty, in sweats, for some of his teammates,
with
an
ankle sprain.
Yeah,
I'll say that. So, you don't have to agree with that, but I just had to throw that in there.
No, I mean, there is a difference between what is required to do the gritty, because somebody like myself can potentially pull that off, versus playing, 48 minutes in an NBA game.
Fair.
So you look at that kind of culture and you're like, okay, that's something special. The guys that they've added to this group are as advertised. They're the players that, Jeff Weltman and John Hammond identified as these are good culture guys. These are guys we want to build around. And you see it. And the head coach, as hired, was going to be a guy that connects with players, really knows about player development. You see that. So the building blocks are in place. The steps that Jeff Weltman and John Hammond have told us they're going to take are happening. And that's really what you could ask for at this stage of the team's development is, are the things you promised coming true? And so far, they are. And so hopefully that bodes well for the future.
Now, Dan, we've heard a lot of the young players, talk about how the chemistry of this team is special and, how you just don't see it that often. And hearing it from them, it's a great thing to hear, but those guys also don't have as much experience in the league to truly know if you see that other places. You're a guy that's been around a lot of these teams, obviously, so it's really encouraging to hear you kind of echo that. I want to ask, I know that we're expecting the Magic to make some moves. Obviously, they're going to bring some guys in during the draft, but are you concerned at all with the potential that, maybe shaking up this roster a little bit might have some kind of impact on that that culture, the camaraderie, or do you think Jamal Mosley is really like the spearhead of that and will just kind of continue it forward?
I do, and I think that the guys that they're building around are so good at embracing other people and bringing people into the locker room that it's funny. You don't look at that locker room and say there's one bad guy, there's one bad apple, there's one guy that's going to be like so opposed to having another big voice in the locker room. I think all these guys are hungry to win, and whatever steps the organization has to take to make that happen, they'll embrace it. You just look at the culture. It was like to a man when they came off the podium for the season wrap-ups. It was such a focus on the work that they had to do this offseason, the specialness of the group, the opportunities ahead. And look, you could coach guys up with all that stuff and try to get them to say it, but at the end of the day, when you're coming to a season wrap-up, that's when a lot of guys express their natural feelings, and you've seen that with teams in years past. And this group is really truly excited about what the future holds here in Orlando, and you're seeing that excitement start to build, and I'll be really excited to see what a lot of these guys do in the offseason to build for next year.
What was the thing that took you most by surprise this season?
That's a good question. I got asked this by Jake Chapman on our season wrap-up podcast for the Orlando Magic, and I'm just going to take the low-hanging fruit here. When I think I was on, it may have been your show prior to the season, and he was talking a lot about how people were underestimating Franz Wagner, and I saw it from the first summer league practice, where it's like, in summer league you have a roster of young guys, but there are also guys on that roster that have been around professional basketball, whether it's G League, whether they've been overseas. There's a collection of young talent. And Jamal Mosley was coming in with a completely new system. It's not like guys in the G League before were running the same thing, or, there was a big pamphlet you could hand to the Magic draft picks and say, hey, this is exactly what we're running. Like, he was installing all that stuff as we go, and Summer League was, the first big installation of that. And with Franz, it was like from day one, it was like almost teacher pet-esque. It's like, do it like Franz is doing, like, in the practice. He's running everything perfect, and you're like, this guy's a rookie, like, he just had that, veteran presence about him as a young kid who's coming to the league for the first time. And I think his season mirrored that. There was no point when you were watching Franz Wagner over the course of his NBA season where it was like, man, that guy's a rookie. He's making rookie mistakes. He's in this big slump. He's hit a rookie wall. You're watching him and you're just like, this guy plays like he's been in the NBA for 7 straight seasons. He doesn't make the same mistake twice. Guys in and out of the lineup around him, he's playing nearly all 82. Whether, you stick the ball in his hands, whether you take him away, whether you put a different point guard next to him, doesn't seem to faze him. His play is, at a consistent level. And so that was a surprising thing to me. And then in that December stretch where they were running out of point guards, it was the Lakeland Magic season where it was like everybody who played there was getting a call up. And this guy was asked to, really, handle the ball. And I think we all saw that he had the potential to do that as the years would go by. But to him, right off the bat, stick the ball in his hands, he's putting up 38-point games, was something that was special to me. And, as I look into the offseason, you're saying, okay, if he could build upon that, build with his playmaking, and on top of that, continue to progress as a shooter, the future is really bright for that guy.
And I wish I would have had you kind of in my ear, Dan, during Summer League when Franz wasn't putting the ball in the basket, and at times it just looked like, I don't know what I'm seeing here. Should I sound the alarms on Franz Wagner? Already people didn't really know who he was to the fullest extent when the Magic drafted him, right? You had a lot of people kind of, giving the head scratching type gesture when he was drafted because they just didn't know. They had no idea very much. And I remember in breaking down, Jonathan and I, broke down a lot of the prospects heading into draft night, and then after the fact as well. And one of the things that we had basically come to consensus of is that Franz isn't elite at anything, it seems, but he's good at everything. Like he's the guy that's going to make the lives easier of those around him. And he did that, but like he took it so many steps further than we expected, especially after Summer League, right? I mean, after Summer League, the storylines were Jalen looks pretty good, Cole looks not good, and Franz put him in the same basket, right? Like, but it's insane what the season will do when you actually, play the extent of the season. Franz plays, what was it, 79 games? So yeah, as far as that goes, where do you see, Dan, Franz's ceiling being as a player in the NBA? I think you could take it a lot of different directions, but you don't want to overreact. But also, kind of, what's your knee-jerk reaction, I guess, to what after that season? What do you think he could do? At his highest.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's something like Josh Cohen and I have tossed around many a times during the course of the games. It's like, where could this guy go? Because he has so many different ways he could take his career. Like, he's the one of the rookies I felt like you could throw him on a veteran team that's in the playoffs right now, and you're like, he has a role. You could put him on a bad team that doesn't have many other assets around it and put the ball in his hands. And I thought he could put up, hollow numbers and win himself Rookie of the Year. But the Magic didn't treat it that way. They've got a number of other young prospects around that you also want to develop. So he's one of those guys that I'll be really curious what year 2 looks like for him. I think seeing where he puts his focus in at the offseason, where he could, make some jumps, just if he continues to progress as a three-point shooter, you could take him notches higher. What I like about him is that he just doesn't ever hurt you. You never feel like, oh, you're in this game and Franz is hurting you in a particular direction. And as we're watching playoff basketball now, we're seeing the value of that. Certain guys are getting taken off the floor. They're not able to play as much because, teams exploit various aspects of their game, or they can't create their own shot. Franz can help you in any way, seemingly could be plug and play for a number of teams. And not only does it help you on the court, but it helps you from a roster building perspective, because you're like, okay, you draft a dynamic 3, you could slide Franz to the 4. Like, you draft a dynamic 4, you could slide Franz to the 3. Like, you could move him up and down lineups. He's just such a valuable player to have on your squad that I think his ceiling is almost what you give to him, give him the opportunity to be, because he's really an electric player. He plays above his years. And so I'm really excited to see what he continues to add to his arsenal over the offseason.
Is Franz, Dan, what you would consider the future of the franchise at this point, or is it too early to say? The franchise, yeah, exactly.
I'd say it's too early to say, especially for a guy that doesn't always, necessarily have the ball in his hands at this stage of his career, because as we see in the NBA, so much is driven by that. Now, does that mean that in the future he can't have the ball in his hands, a lot? I don't necessarily think so. I think at times he could have that like Hedo Turkoglu type of role down the road, where it's like, okay, he's going to be a secondary ball handler in some really key moments. Hedo's role got accentuated in that finals run because Jameer Nelson wasn't there. But when we saw the two of them next to each other, it really, allowed you to play different. Teams want to take something away. Well, you could play it a completely different way and keep a defense off balance. And I think Franz is going to give you that opportunity to consistently keep defenses off balance, whether it's, you're taking away something Markel's doing, Cole, Jalen, etc. It's like, okay, well, we have this other guy here who can make plays off the wing, or, run some action to bring him up to the top, and those guys are off to the side. So there's just so much you could do with him, and then fall asleep on him. He's going to backdoor cut you. I just love his game so much. It's going to be really fun to watch him grow.
My name is not Josh, but Dan, you are making me giddy the way you are talking about Franz Wagner.
I love Franz.
There we go. Tell me what you think of Jalen Suggs, and maybe some things that maybe we didn't see from him on the floor this season that perhaps you saw elsewhere.
Yeah, I think he is a better three-point shooter than his numbers suggest over the course of his rookie season. Watching just some of the, practice sessions, I think one of the things for him that was really telling, over the course of the rookie season is, as a rookie, you don't know what you don't know. If you're always the most athletic person, coming out, the guys you played against, he could probably at any point in his life, if he wanted to get a basket, just, out athletic guys to get to the rim. And I think over the course of his rookie campaign, he found, areas where he has to improve finishing around the rim, areas he has to improve with his shot. But I think most importantly, it's at the condition level at which you have to play an NBA game. He gives so much on the defensive end. He's giving you 110% that, now you add to it a longer game. You add to it an extended, 3-point line, and you add in bigger bodies, more athletic guys. It takes something to figure out. And so I think he figured a lot of that out, especially during the time he was injured. And you look at Jalen's numbers with him on and off the floor prior to the injury and post-injury, and you say, whoa, okay, there's a reason the Magic during that stretch were playing like the number 2, number 1 defensive team in the NBA. And a large part of it was Jalen Suggs. He's going to give you so much on that end of the floor. I think that's a great baseline. And then I'm really excited to see, as he looks at all the film of things that happened on the offensive end, I think he's going to be one of those guys that season 2, people are going to be like, whoa, okay, like this guy is even better than advertised. So I'm really excited, really high on Jalen Suggs for what the future has to offer for him. And then I think, potentially playing some minutes alongside, Markelle Fultz is going to be exciting too for him to see. This guy could take pressure off me on the offensive end. I don't have to do it all for one of the first times in my life. That's going to be another big assist for him too.
Was there a game, Dan, or one that like sticks out to you most when you like look back on this team this season? Is there a game or a stretch, something that sticks out to you about that like speaks volumes about what the future holds?
It's really tough because like, you look at the beginning of the season and you get really excited about like the New York win and some of the guys that participated in that and the electricity of that type of win. And then, you look at the Jalen Suggs come back from injury and the progress the defense made during that stretch. You look at some of Wendell Carter's dominant stretches and you're like, geez, this guy just got better month after month and improved in his consistency and leadership. And you get excited about that. Franz has you excited throughout. You're really excited about when he was handling the ball in December, putting up 38-point games and having, guys like Giannis and Embiid and, Bud just, rave about the guy and saying they've, haven't seen rookies play this type of polished game before. And that gets you really excited. And then you could even just look to like, Mo Wagner was saying the last game of the season, and you have a team that, some people would say has nothing to play for. Granted, they're not playing against all the Heat starters, but, just played an electric game from start to finish to close out the season and really set the tone. And then you look at the Markelle stretches. So it's really tough because like you never felt like the Magic throughout that season had all their guys together, all healthy for any extended stretch. And that's what has me excited is like they put together some real good stretches of basketball individually. You piece all these guys together, and I think they could, surprise people with how good they could be as a group together. Now, I'm not saying that means next year they're contending for a championship, but for where the future holds, I think they can start to take steps towards becoming that team.
It's a lot of pessimism there, Dan. No, I'm just kidding. So you talked about, obviously, a lot of the exciting young pieces. Hopefully, we've got one more piece that we're hoping is going to be healthy to start of next season in Jonathan Isaac. I mean, realistically, like you said, not contenders, but where do you see this team potentially being next year? You're adding a top pick, hopefully. Jonathan Isaac, if he comes back healthy and just you're bringing the rest of these guys back, and theoretically they should be ready to go from day one of training camp. What kind of potential do you think the team has next season?
I just think that they have to be a team that continues to be competitive every night with all these pieces in place. And then that gives you a baseline of like, okay, where do we need to start to add guys? What guys don't necessarily fit together? You can really start to make a determination of what's needed to this group. Look, you're going to have another high draft pick added to it that we're not even considering in this formula. What potentially happens in free agency. So it's really hard to put a level of like where they'll fall in a conference or a potential playoff race at this juncture, because obviously it also depends on what happens around them. Other teams can improve, other teams can fall apart real quickly in this league. So with other action going on, it's hard for me to assess that. But I just look at the way this group played together from start to finish, and the fact that so many guys missed periods of time that didn't necessarily coincide with each other. I'm just excited to see that product on the floor next season when it's like, okay, we've got all these guys healthy. Like, what does this team really look like? Because I think in the small stretches and small sample size where we did see it, it was really exciting.
And I know we can't really get into prospects just yet, but what, if the Magic do end up with a top pick, what is something that you think the Magic need or could add to this roster to really benefit them?
I just think you're at the stage of the franchise development where it's just you add the best player available. Like, I'm really, really high on that. You don't want to be the team that passes on Michael Jordan because you have Clyde Drexler. It's like just keep adding the best players and it'll figure itself out. That's my motto. It's different when you're like the 2009 Magic and it's like, okay, there's one kind of spot on the team where you could kind of improve coming off a finals run. But with this team, I think right now you add the best players. And the good part is the players that the Magic have drafted over the years are all versatile. So it's like if you need to move up, you could go up and down the Magic's roster. And it's like if a guy needs to slide over a spot, there's almost, not a player to a man that can't do it. So that's a nice ability when you add so many versatile guys is you have so much flexibility when you're building your roster.
All right, we're going to switch a little some gears here. We know that you're a big UFC guy. In the past, you've told me if you're in a city and there's a UFC event going on, you are there. I don't know if you guys pay attention to boxing, but yesterday Tyson Fury fought Dylan White, and then him and Francis Ngannou were in the ring together after the fight, and it seems like they're going to try to get something to happen. But apart from that, who are some of your favorite fighters? Some matchups that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm always big on Amanda Nunes. She came to a Magic game a couple years back. I've seen her fight in person 2 or 3 times. And just the way she carries herself, her family, it's just such a kind-hearted person that it's just amazing when you have somebody who's just so naturally kind, and then they go in the ring and they just roll through people. Right. So I was upset to see her, lose her last fight. Really want to see her, come back and reclaim a championship or championship belt and leave on her terms whenever she wants to do that. There's other fighters that always interest me. Along with meeting Amanda Nunes, Mike Perry was at that sort of meet and greet, and he's an interesting guy because he grew up in Apopka, Florida. Right by here, but he's now in bare knuckle fighting. So these guys, come and go. And but I would say, I love watching the Korean Zombie. Is one of my top guys that I really enjoy watching. And it was sad to see, the shelf life of these guys is so fast in that career. And he was a guy who had to serve time for the Korean military, and that interrupted his prime. So, I was hoping he could get one shot at a championship belt and kind of check that milestone off his list. But it looks like he'll be unable to do that. That division just keeps getting tougher and tougher at the top. So there's just so many good fighters. It's been interesting now. Like I like it because, look, there's not much NBA on Saturday nights. Don't play too many Saturday games. So you have a lot of Saturdays free. And it's great that they have, there's a fight every Saturday, but there is that balance that some of these cards are getting a little weaker now, a little less top heavy. Even though I'm an avid watcher, there'll be some fight nights where I'm like, I know like 3 of these guys on the main card. And that's what happens when you have like 600 signed fighters. So I'll be interested to see how the UFC handles that, if they're able to build up enough name recognition within, some of these cards to get people hyped up Saturday night after Saturday night, because I think that's hard to do.
I wanted to ask you, Dan, in regards to the UFC, this is really the only UFC question that I want to ask you here. We have a card coming up next Saturday, and it's the main event is Rob Font and Marlon Chito Vera. Do you lean one way or the other? Do you feel are you a fan of either of those guys? And do you have a way that you lean?
I don't. Like I said, these fights are so tough. Like there was one point where like it was like, okay, you felt when it came to the top of a division, there was clear distinct between the head of the division and the fall off. You look at like the Ronda Rousey era, and it was just like she would just roll through people. You look through the Conor McGregor era, and while you could question some of the people that he fought, there was no question for a period of that time he was the dominant person at the division. He could switch weight divisions and win. You looked at John Jones' reign where, he was clear at the top, and when he wasn't, it was Daniel Cormier. And now I feel like the level of fighting has increased year by year so much. So many people are just well trained for the sport. It's not like the early like Chuck Liddell era where it was like you put this guy who's like a complete boxer, has no ground game against a kickboxer, and it's just like complete chaos. Now it's just like that is so tight that fight to fight, I really don't have a great feel. But I'm not as much of a betting man because it's a tough sport to bet on.
It's a terrible sport to bet on.
Yeah.
That's coming from someone who has. I've stopped. I've stepped away because it is from betting UFC because it is awful.
I think we can all agree that we need another Chimaev and Burns fight. This time 5 rounds. That 3 rounds was incredible.
My goodness,
was not long enough.
I know that was one of the greatest fights I've ever seen, and like I said, I watch a lot of these, and it was just like you left wanting more. And I believe Burns wanted 5 rounds heading into it. So the fact that he didn't get it, I think we all wanted it. But I think one of the times Dana White really traded the fighters right. I think he gave him a winner's pay for that, along with the fight night bonus, which was well deserved.
Dan, I would be remiss if I brought you on here and we didn't talk about Boy Meets World, at least for a little bit here. I know Luke is going to kind of tune out. I've had some people since our last episode, Dan, that have hit me up and like, I never saw Boy Meets World or I had never heard of it. They went through and
Probably
they watched
Tony.
it, and they're like, this is the best.
I saw he was on this show recently, and I'm like, does Tony even have ever watched an episode of Boy Meets World? I know he doesn't have it on DVD because he probably doesn't even know what a DVD player is. He's so young, his streaming services from day one. So I don't even want to get into that because I'd probably make a Boy Meets World reference. Like, you should drop this in a meme, and he'd be like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, Tony, if you're listening, all of Boy Meets World is on Disney Plus now. So you can go to Disney Plus and stream all of Boy Meets World. But
that's right.
I've had a couple of people watch it and tell me like it's the best show ever. I'm like, yeah, Dan and I told you it was. So we don't have to get too deep into it. I just have a few trivia questions I want to throw at you just for a little bit of fun here. So you might have to put your thinking cap on.
Right. I've taken how you go through those stages where like you binge watch a show and then like you don't watch it for a while, and then it's like brand new when you watch it. I'm like kind of right at that point now where it's like I'm about to go back into it. I've taken a few, I don't want to say years up, maybe like a year and a half off. So I'm like ready to go back in again.
I'm right there.
I think I'll still fare
all right,
well.
I think you will too. They're not crazy or anything.
All right.
What do Sean and Corey place in Rachel and Angela's dorm?
Ooh, what do Sean and Corey place in Rachel? And
this is like during like the prank wars when they're in college.
Yeah, I know the episode, so I'm trying to go through it. That is, oof.
You told this man it wouldn't be hard, and then you're asking him what specific item they put in a room.
When I say he's gonna know instantly.
I know, and this is what's gonna bother. This is what's gonna keep me up at night.
Oh no!
Is the fact that I don't know this. I'm really bothered actually right now by the fact that I don't know.
It's Rachel's car.
Oh. My goodness.
And then if you got that, I was going to ask what kind of car it was. Do you remember what kind of car it is?
I don't.
It's like an old Volkswagen Beetle.
I was going to say it was something small.
Yeah.
It was like not they stayed within the framework of reality, and I was going to go with actually I was going to say my first thing was going to be a Kia, and then I was like, but I don't know if Kia was as popular right then, and it might have been a Beetle, and so I would have got it on the second go.
All right. This one is a little bit more obscure. If you don't get this one, I won't hold it against you. Do you remember what Amy and Alan's wedding song is?
Oh, it was with it was by the Monkees, right? Was it the
what song? What's the name of the song? That's what I'm looking for.
Because it's where is that where the episode where the guy that they meet over in England comes over to visit.
It's Reginald Fairfield. Yeah.
Yes. And he comes over, and they were like the secondary Beatles of the time. And I know the band. I know Reginald Fairfield. I know the hot tub part of the episode where he's like, taking advantage of that. Oh, God. I don't want to start singing it. So.
Sing it, Dan.
I'll take the L.
It's My Girl.
My Girl, yeah.
Yeah, it's My Girl.
I was gonna have to sing the lyrics just to it.
Yeah, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that, Dan. Yes. All right, the last thing. Who was the leader of the center?
Oh my God, one of the Mr. Mac.
Mr. Mac, let's go, Dan Savage.
I want to put that's one of my all-time episodes right there when Corey's dad throws Mr. Mac up against the wall and basically says like, "Hey, you mess with this kid, I'm gonna whoop you down." And Mr. Feeney's about to throw hands too. Yeah. That's a great episode.
All-timer.
The only downfall to the episode is it's like the end of Mr. Turner, which is one of the forgotten scenes.
That's right.
He's in the hospital bed. And we really don't even know what happens to him until the series finale, when they just make an obscure reference that he's on the other side of the building where they don't go to anymore.
I might be mistaken. I don't know how much of Girl Meets World you watch. I didn't watch very much of it.
Didn't.
Does he make? I think he might make an appearance in that.
He does. Yeah. I think I read that. So,
which is really unfortunate because he was such a great character. I'd be interested to learn what went wrong because the writing of that show was so good. It doesn't make sense for it to kind of end that way.
No, I mean you had him, his buddy Eli.
Yeah.
There was good chemistry there. Obviously they tried to carve out a bigger role for him, having Sean move in with him. But I would have liked to seen Mr. Turner get a better send off than a hospital bed.
Yeah.
And that's the only downfall of that episode, which you spoke to.
Yeah, I watched that scene that you're referring to with them in the waiting room right before we got on this. And I was like, oh, I need to watch Boy Meets World again. It's just the best show ever.
It really is. I'll admit my trivia. I should have gotten My Girl. I was halfway there. I got the band, not the song, and I would have got the song because I was gonna start off with the lyrics and I would have hit it by the middle. The Rachel one I didn't know, and that one's gonna keep me up at night that I went.
All right, next.
Kind of two for three. I will say my trivia knowledge leans front half of the show better,
right,
pre-college years than post, because there are occasions where I'll watch and then by the time they graduate, I'll restart to the beginning again.
Fair enough.
Nothing against that era. I've actually figured out I kind of like it more than I've given it credit for in the past. But Eric starts to go off the hinges by the end, and that's kind of what turns me off. But I'm brought on this show for magic analysis, so I'm going to start breaking down Eric.
That's okay. We did it last time. I tell you what, next time you have the trivia questions for me, and then I'll just totally bomb. I can guarantee that.
I mean, there's so many good ones that you could pull from various episodes. Names of whether it's the guys that Topanga dates in between her and Corey's breakup.
Ooh, I forget his name. I do forget. Is it David?
No, I don't think it's
not David. Now I'm gonna have to go and look tonight. But Dan Savage, thank you so much.
There's two eras of breakup. There's the early one where like Corey's jumping on people's backs.
Oh yes, the tall guy.
Dating. And then there's the breakup, which is where
the Lauren breakup.
The Lauren breakup, and she was in another show recently. I'm blanking on the name. It was really popular on streaming services. It's kind of like a murder mystery show with the woman who's from Married with Children. They were on a show together. And all I could see and think about while my wife was watching that show was that she was Lauren from Boy Meets World.
Dead to Me?
Dead to Me,
Dead to Me. My wife watches that too.
Yeah. I couldn't take it
I watched
serious.
that.
I couldn't. I was like, that's Lauren. I can't.
Now
I
Luke
can't
is
get
back.
into
I'm here. I love that show.
It is a good show.
But I hear she kind of plays a home wrecker in that show too, so it's only fitting. So maybe I should give it a shot.
That's awesome. All right, well, Dan Savage, man, thank you so much for taking the time, joining us, talking
I want
UFC.
to ask you. I want to ask you two one question.
Let's go.
We talked a lot about optimism on the show, which I love because I think there is a lot of reasons to be optimistic in a season without that many wins. What were each of you most optimistic about heading into next season?
To me, it's Franz and Wendell. Like, Franz was just a huge surprise. We didn't know what to expect out of him, in the draft. Luke has been a Wendell guy basically since day one. And I was a fan of Wendell, but like mid through the season, I was like, I feel like he's got another level. He can be even better than what he's shown, and like especially like January, February, March, just killed it. So those two guys, I feel like we have at least two for sure guys, part of the foundation moving forward.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, pretty much Jonathan answered it for me, which is fine. But it's definitely Dell. Like Jonathan said, I've been a fan of him since before the season started, when we were having the discussions about who's going to make the start. Wendell and Mo, before we knew that they'd be basically starting together all year when active. So yeah, I think Dell is definitely the kind of the bright spot for me. He came out of nowhere, much like Franz, which obviously it's easy to kind of couple them together as the solo bright spot together. But yeah, I'm optimistic, really, really because of Dell. I think that he kind of gives us that foundation, like Jonathan said, and it's nice to know that you can kind of go into next season knowing like, okay, we've got definitely two core pieces, and I think Jalen, if he can put it together offensively next year, he doesn't need to really do anything differently defensively, and he's already only in year one. So I think offensively, if he can take that next step, man, I think that there's a bright future. Definitely, I just am very concerned about how good the East is.
Yeah.
So for so long we talked about the West as dominant, LeBron running through the East. Oh man, he has it so easy. And even though he didn't, I'm a LeBron truther, so whatever. But I will say, obviously, the West was better at the time that all that happened, that he was running through the East. But yeah, I'm just nervous. I mean, teams like the Hornets, who obviously Borrego gone. I mean, do they take a step down because in hindsight that was a bad decision on their part? I don't know, but I just feel like there are so many good teams. I would love to say that this team could be a play-in team next year, and I'm going to stick to that and just hope that some teams in that realm of the East kind of take a step back and fall back to reality, because with the pieces that the Magic have, man, I am truly very optimistic about next year and the years to come for sure.
Definitely. I look forward to talking about that on the season preview or post summer league wrap up, or whatever.
Absolutely.
And we'll have a better assessment of where things stand.
So Dan just promised he'll come back on before the season started. That's what we just heard.
We already forget about the Magic portion of the preview. It was promised when we were talking about I'm going to turn the tables and put the Boy Meets Trivia on you, and I want one or two back. I'm going to prep for that. Forget the draft prep. I'm going to start prepping for Boy Meets World Trivia coming up.
Dan, is there any chance that we see you at the lottery watch party like we did last year? Just can you jump over for a few minutes?
Well, I was planning on it, and then the way I found out Tony was on this show, the minute you guys ended, he texted me, "Do not go to the $6,000 party. That was bad luck last year."
Oh my gosh,
we talked about it. Yeah, don't do anything different that night.
I will come if I'm in Orlando. I may actually be at the lottery in Chicago this year with
nice.
Depending on COVID protocols, where everything stands, what kind of access is going to be there. Still figuring all that out.
You guys heard it here first. Dan Savage is the Orlando Magic's rep at the lottery.
That I will not be. I do not want that pressure. I will happily put that on somebody else. Let them get the accolades or the fall. I don't want that. I just want to be there to talk to the person that is successful.
Right.
I'm going to say is successful because we're going to put that out there in the universe.
Awesome.
Even though I would say, I can't talk about prospects yet, but there are 6 guys I like. So I feel good about that. I feel like there are 6+ guys I really like. So regardless of where we land, I think we're going to
leave fall lower than 6.
Guy. But if I had my way about it, I would like this regime to have their pick of those 6+ guys.
Fair enough. All right, I think that's going to do it for us, Dan. Thanks for coming on. We're definitely going to hold you to that, bring you back for some more Orlando Magic trivia. We may or may not talk about the Orlando Magic, but always a pleasure, man. Really, really appreciate having you on. So much fun to have the conversation.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Dan. All right, guys, that was our interview with Dan Savage. Always appreciate Dan coming on the show. Always a lot of fun. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we end the show. Our draft lottery watch party coming up on Tuesday, May 17th. Harry Buffalo, downtown Orlando. That's 129 West Church Street in Orlando. The time is still to be determined. We're guessing it's probably going to be sometime between 7 or 8 that the party will start, with the draft lottery happening between sometime 8 and 9. We're going to have some trivia with some giveaways for you guys. We're also going to be giving away an autographed Franz Wagner jersey for free, so make sure that you guys come through for that. We're also working on a voicemail episode right now, so if you guys want to call and leave your question or your take to be featured on the show, you can call us at 407-603-1189. That's 407-603-1189. Also, we're going to give a quick shout-out to all of our patrons. Shout out Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Keith Garcia, Zico, Carson Tulo, Nathan Lynn, Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Norm L, Magic Player History, Julio, Bailey, Matt Lyman, Eric Segovia, Gabe Gaines, Bo Outlaw Fan, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Franz Goated for show. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you are interested in financially supporting the show, you can find us at patreon.com/the6manshow. We have 3 tiers to choose from with different levels of benefits. Luke, the last thing that we need to do before we close out the show here, great episode with Dan Savage, but we are going to run the Tankathon. We're here at tankathon.com. We're going to go ahead and simulate the lottery one time, share the results. I'm clicking the button now. And the Magic end up with a 3rd pick. Charlotte jumps 12 spots to number 1. Houston falls 1 to 2. And then the Magic are there at 3. That would suck if Charlotte ends up with the number 1 overall pick.
12. Ugh.
Yeah.
Gross. 12 spots. That's just disgusting. I'm already on the fence of redo the lottery. I'm done with it. But if that were to happen, I think I'm done.
Let's just go back to the odds pre-2019 when you had it was what was it, a 20% chance if you're in the top 3 to end up with the number 1 overall pick, something like that.
Yeah, I'm getting sour to the lottery, so hopefully we get something.
I've started the habit of doing the Tankathon every day, and now I'm over it, but I'm I started this, we only got a few more weeks to go. I have to keep doing it. So hopefully this will all be worth it, and we'll be we were so worried about the lottery for nothing. We got the 1st pick. It's going to be a great time. So we'll see what happens. But make sure you guys come out to the draft lottery watch party. It's going to be a fun time. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You guys are listening to The 6th Man Show. We will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to The 6th Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. Please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It would really help us out a lot. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 6th Man Show and like us on Facebook. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic.